It was March 2012, and I had repacked my bags at least 3 times in preparation for my first international trip. I was headed to Haiti with a group of 5 other college students to help with the recovery efforts after the January 2010 earthquake. But there was nothing I packed in my bags that could have prepared me for the transformative experience that greatly impacts how I see and continue to engage with communities to this day. I expected my time in Haiti to be filled with self-gratifying manual labor, but instead, my time was spent building relationships and listening to residents. Thanks to our local hosts, we were embedded in communities, still working to recover from both the devastation of the earthquake and the well-intentioned, but yet uninformed humanitarian efforts. It was in the mountains, sitting in a circle, listening to a group of farmers, that I learned that they were unable to access the resources that were allocated to them after the earthquake. I wondered, how could this continue to happen for the last 2 years? They shared that due to the unpaved roads up the mountain where the village was located, the goods were simply left at the bottom of the mountain, oftentimes with little or no notification. By the time the farmers were aware of the resources, those at the town at the bottom of the mountain had rummaged through it, taking the good stuff, or the food had simply spoiled from being left out in the sun for too long. The farmer shared that this was not a new occurrence in connection to the recovery efforts, but a reality that they had experienced for as long as they can remember. So then, I questioned, did those leading the recovery efforts include or consider the people that were living in the mountains? Feeling as if a group of college students were simply wasting their time talking about issues instead of actually doing something that can help, a woman approached after a Women's Day celebration event that we attended. With a little bit of broken English intermixed with some Creole, she shared how excited she was that we decided to spend time with them instead of partying on a beach like our peers. But let's be real. It didn't take much arm twisting to get a group of college students to the beach. And despite the slight gangsterline of the photo, there wasn't any beer or rum outside of the frame. So when we asked what we can do to help, the woman who approached shared that by spending time with them, listening to their stories, and sharing it with others could potentially shed light on how things could be better. That by being located in the mountains, oftentimes they're excluded, left out, or forgotten about. And having people who are willing and invested in hearing their stories was truly invaluable. So aside from enjoying the beauty of all things Haiti, I learned the value of directly engaging with residents who can share knowledge of who's in the community, the history of that community, and what is currently going on in that community. Direct engagement with residents allows us to see the community through their lived experience. And it is these experiences rooted in place that we are able to identify how to best face forward. But this level of engagement happens when we are embedded and when we embody the power of Sankofa. Sankofa is a Ghanaian term that literally translates as, it is not too taboo to fetch what is at risk of being left behind. Sankofa is illustrated with 2 Ndikra symbols, one of which is a mythical bird with its feet facing forward and its head effortlessly turned backwards, reaching for a precious egg. The power in the concept is in the notion that to achieve forward progress, we must consider our past and our history. So you may ask, what precious eggs from our past can provide insight on how we can best face forward and pursue progress? Well, a precious egg I'm reminded of as I continue to embed myself in this place and space of Mississippi is the work of Ella Baker. Ms. Baker believed that true and sustained progress happens when we are looking for the experiences of those residents in that community. It is upon that belief that a group of students got together and they founded the Student Nonviolence Coordinating Committee, or SNCC. Members of SNCC work with members of other organizations, such as the Congress of Racial Equality, the National Association for the Advancement of Colored People, and the Southern Christian Leadership Congress. Together, members of these organizations, they use their lived experience to identify how to best face forward. They developed a movement in which volunteers were embedded in local Mississippi communities. They spent their time listening to residents, hearing about the experience, and understanding what was going on in that community to figure out how to pursue forward progress. This movement, known as the Mississippi Summer Project, or also known as Freedom Summer, raised national awareness for the need of voting rights legislation and created momentum for the Voting Rights Act of 1965. So if we have a group of college students who are able to work in community to identify ways to address some of our most pressing social issues, what would happen if we all embedded ourselves and listened to the experiences of residents? I would argue that by allowing people to share their own stories and tell their own histories, we begin to identify the precious eggs of community power that, if incubated, can manifest strategies for social change. It's history that reminds us that if we embed ourselves in community, we can inspire legislation that can change the possibilities for generations to come. That by embedding ourselves in community, we can create pathways to places we may never travel ourselves. And that by embedding ourselves in community, the dreams of our ancestors can become closer to a lived reality for us. By listening to those in community, we're exposed to invaluable knowledge and insights on how to make positive progress towards the future. But we're able to do that, similar to the Sankofa bird, if we are firmly planted or embedded in place and space. Doing so allows us to get directly to the heart of a community. This is represented in the alternative sign for Sankofa, the stylized heart shape. Getting directly to a heart of a community allows us to be exposed to the untapped skills, potentials, and assets that can effectively contribute towards change. This is why it's so important for us to seek out those stories and those histories and those experiences of residents, as they can help us advance and sustain progress in a manner that's rooted in that space and place. By directly engaging with and empowering those who will be impacted by programs, initiatives, and decisions, we are acknowledging a community's ability to use the assets it has in a way that's culturally relevant for that particular community. The Southern hip-hop artists I met during my dissertation, they incorporated the history of their community and the way that they used hip-hop music to pursue social change and community development. They shared how their understanding of residents' lived experience allowed them to use their skills and assets as artists to create sites of belonging, resistance, and endurance. So I strongly believe that in order to achieve forward progress, we must consider and include those who are at or beyond the margins of society. The Southern hip-hop artists that I met and the people that I met in Haiti, they all taught me that to achieve forward progress, we must consider and include the histories, the stories, and those experiences. That way we can retrieve those precious eggs of community power that are found in the experiences of those residents. With our feet firmly planted in place, we must not think of it as too taboo to fetch what is at risk of being left behind. By directly engaging with the people in Haiti, those who are in the mountains and on the margins of society, me and a group of college students were able to identify how to support their recovery efforts. By centering their lived experience, coupled with the resources donated to us by friends and family back home, by the time our return flight landed in the States, we were able to provide 5 families with the resources needed to sustain their farms for the next year. So if a group of college students were able to identify ways to support the recovery efforts of the people in the mountains, I can only imagine what the impact could have been if those in the mountains were included in the development of those recovery efforts. What would happen if we unlocked the potential of every person to strengthen their communities by listening to their stories, their histories, and their experiences? I've heard it said that to know history is to know thyself, the world around you, and how to better both. So as we all collectively endeavor to contribute to our shared society, I urge you, embed yourself in community in ways that exposes you to the experiences, the stories, and the histories that may differ from your own. For it is upon those collective histories, rooted in place, that we're able to make positive progress towards the thriving future that we all dream of. Thank you.